He says he also tried to teach him the Lord's Prayer, but he didn't want to learn that and just only got the Beans, Beans, a Musical Fruit poem.
Welcome to season 6, where we're phoning it in.
You don't think critically and then put a Pop-Tart into your body.
I am highly caffeinated and minorly concussed.
Aruga, aruga!
What came first, the love sack or the gravity gun?
It's my turn to do a sin with Sonic.
This is for the freaks.
Too much piss.
That's the kind of bad decisions we like to hear about.
Love me a sleepy ass bat.
How much shrimp can you fit in your mortal body?
You told me you guys would be cool.
That's season 6 intro material right there.
Hello and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and how, holy crap, you guys, Stephen King has written so many things, and I have to reference a lot of them through researching today's topic.
Name 4.
Name 4. I will later, actually. I don't want to ruin a later bit.
Never mind then.
This is one of those times where I gotta just own up to not reading very much, right? Like, I want to appreciate Stephen King's works, but I don't like reading. So
Matt doesn't like reading, and he also doesn't like places that let you read.
I do like libraries.
Matt, good news.
Libraries are good.
Matt, good news. Stephen King is one of, if not the most adapted author into movies as well.
Right, but a lot of those adaptations are not good, or at least vastly different from the books.
Sure, but the core is there. So as we've been hinting at, this is another flavor text this week, guys. This one brought from patron and friend of the show, new best friend of the show, Flum. He doesn't have a Discord name, and I don't want to dox him here on our podcast, so we'll just call him by his last name, Flum. I have once again been tasked with taking on a horror fantasy series from the 80s that has been massively influential and wide read, although not by any of us on the podcast. That is the Dark Tower series. The 8.5 book series, written by author Stephen King, was published its first entry in 1982, and its most recent entry came out in 2012. So it's been a 4-decade project by Stephen King.
Oh my god.
That's insane. That's like Metallica shit, man.
Right? Such a massive undertaking can't be tackled alone, which is why I am joined today by Todd, has forgotten the face of his father, Thomas, and Matt, does not aim with his hand, does not kill with his gun, Cole, to help me wander through a fantastical desert and fight Satan to bring you this ancient but also modern tale.
Sorry, I'm still hung up on 8.5 books. One, the number half is usually not a measurement of books, but also
Fair.
too, that's so many books.
That's so many books.
It's a book and a half more than there are Harry Potters.
A book and a half more than there are Harry Potters. Almost 3 times as many Lords of the Ring that there are. The half book is it's a prelude novella. We'll get to it. It's like 9 books, but one's a novella, so it's really short and considered half a book. Guys, what do you know about The Dark Tower or its author, Stephen King?
Incredibly little. I know the Stephen King greatest hits. You're probably going to say a number of Stephen King books or books that have been adapted into movies, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm familiar with that. Dark Tower, like next to nothing. I've got a good friend from high school that he was super into Dark Tower, so I'm sure at some point you're going to reference something and it's going to like
unlock
a flashback,
a memory.
Yeah, to a reference that he told me about in like 2001. But knowing the books were still coming out 10 years after that, there's surprises in store. So I, on a scale from 1 to 10, like 1,
One, almost
just north
nothing.
of one.
Okay.
Yeah, I know less than that. I know absolutely nothing. I knew that we were recording Dark Tower today, and I did not know that that was a Stephen King book until I opened these notes.
Good. Great. Even
Wow.
better.
So if I'm at a 1.1, you're at like
a 0.1.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this might be the flavor text that I know the least about going into, and if it's not, it's really close.
Cool. This is gonna be something, because I think this intersects both of your interests, probably in different ways and for different reasons, but I think you'll both get a lot out of it.
I'll be honest with you, I'm way more excited now that I know it's a Stephen King book.
Yeah.
Like, way more excited.
Yeah. So let's dive into that, because I don't think we can talk about this series without first talking about Stephen King. Stephen King, as you may know, is an American author from Portland, Maine. He has a legacy of best-selling novels and screenplays that he has been cranking out with manic consistency since the 1970s. 1974, I think, Carrie was released, the novel, and since then, he has just cranked out novels and short stories like a man possessed. And he would tell you that is because he was a man possessed by addiction. Yeah. We'll get to that. King's style fuses the everyday yet seemingly incomprehensible experiences of the white American baby boomer with the supernatural to create a sort of modern mythology for things like addiction, religion, sexuality, technology, etc., etc. He's a horror author. He cut his teeth writing horror. He branched out into more like slice of life and like coming of age stories as well, but he always manages to return to this like using the supernatural to help explain the everyday things that we can't understand. And it's done very well for him. He's an incredibly successful author, probably the most well-known and prolific American author. And part of the contribution to his success, taking him from a best-selling author to a household name, was his willingness to sell his books into film adaptation during the peak of popularity of the mid to high budget horror film, making him a Hollywood fixture and one of the only remaining writers who can sell a film on his name alone. I don't know anyone not remaining to add to that list. But I'm sure there are. But yeah, like you see Stephen King's something,
right?
It still puts butts in seats.
And I think there's obviously a lot of really famous like movie like directors that have that same power, but I'm struggling to think of other writers, like other like famous titled well-known authors that could like put their name on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not many that are still like actively writing.
Yeah.
I think that there are authors who like there's a new Hunger Games book that just came out, right? And so like I'm sure is about to come out, I don't know. But if they were to come back and do like another Hunger Games movie later, I think that would put butts in seats, but that's a property.
Yeah, that's the Hunger Games, not Suzanne Collins. Like,
right. And like literally the only other author, and again, like I've acknowledged in this podcast and will acknowledge again, I am not a particularly well-read individual, but I watched a lot of shit, and the only other movies that I can think of that have an author directly tied to them who is an American author is Stephanie Meyer in the Twilight movies, right? And like if somebody were to like if they were to say this is a Stephanie Meyer movie, that might get you there, but like I can't
those are
think of
still
anybody.
those are still Twilight movies, like
Right.
because
Well,
I
I'm
was
saying like if
I was
Stephanie
gonna-
Meyer did a not Twilight and somebody was like, here's
Sure.
a new Stephanie, but this is a Stephanie Meyer property, I think that it might be not on the same level, but like it comparable in it, the ability to sell tickets on that name alone.
Sure.
But that's the only one I can think of.
I was gonna mention the two I'll mention were J.K. Rowling, which is in a similar boat to the other two examples
Sure.
we mentioned, where
Yep.
they're all it's the Harry Potter name that sells, not her name. And the other one is closer to Stephen King's situation, but significantly less impactful. Where I think towards the end of his life, you could sell a movie on Cormac McCarthy's name, who wrote like No
Yeah.
Country for Old Men, The Road, things like that. But those weren't pitched as Cormac McCarthy's The Road. It was just
Right.
a like when you told someone you were excited for that movie and said it's by the guy who wrote No Country for Old Men, they'd make the connection.
Yeah.
Many of Stephen King's film adaptations have become touchstones of 80s and 90s culture, like The Shining, Christine, Children of the Corn, Stand By Me, Misery, The Lawnmower Man, The Shawshank Redemption, and The Green Mile. That's just the movies, and that's just the movies that came out between 1980 and 2000. If you don't know one of those movies, why are you listening to this podcast? Like,
Right. Who saw this?
I'll be honest
Who saw
with you
the
right
title of
now.
this and was like, "Oh, this is still for me."
I'll tell you right now, I have not heard of, or at least I don't think I've heard of, The Lawnmower Man. Everything else, incredibly familiar with. Lawnmower Man feels like a pull. Maybe I just missed it.
I really wanted to put The Lawnmower Man in that list. It's a very bad movie about a
Good. Okay.
about virtual reality that takes over a man. A man gets into a virtual reality machine. The AI takes over his body, and he robot pilots his body through mayhem and destruction, and it's awful but silly.
It's one of those titles where I've heard of it and I know nothing about it, so that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Stephen King is a lifelong and outspoken addict, with addiction being a frequent theme of his stories. Now sober, he'll candidly and often flippantly discuss the negative effects drugs and alcohol have had on his life and the lives of those around him, stating at different times that he has no memory of writing certain books or working on certain films. Cujo and Maximum Overdrive are the most cited, Cujo being the book he claims he has no memory of writing because he was flying high on cocaine the whole time.
Wow.
And Maximum Overdrive, the movie he directed, that he has no memory of directing because he was flying high on cocaine the whole time.
Incredible.
Maximum Overdrive is one of my dad's favorite movies because it has
Yeah.
an all AC/DC soundtrack.
Yeah, it does. Maximum
Okay.
Overdrive is wild.
That movie rips in a very particular 80s and cocaine kind of way.
Oh yeah. Works of his like The Shining, Misery, Dreamcatcher, Secret Window, and 1408 all contain elements of King processing his relationship with addiction. It's Stephen King. I don't know what else to say. Like, if you haven't heard of The Green Mile or Shawshank Redemption or The Shining, like, again, what are we doing here? Go pause this, go watch one of those movies and come back, because that's a way better use of 2 hours of your life. The Dark Tower. The Dark Tower is a series, as I mentioned earlier, And it's Stephen King's take on a fantasy epic in the style of T.H. White, who did like The Once and Future King, the like touchstone kind of King Arthur novel, J.A.R. Tolkien, or C.S. Lewis. Tolkien doing Lord of the Rings and Lewis doing the Chronicles of Narnia. But the big difference is he wanted this to be kind of a more American perspective. It's the 80s American take on a fantasy legacy. Its most literal and derivative like summation could be wrapped up something like if the Arthurian legend were filtered through an American Western. It's almost quite literally that, which we'll get to in a minute. It was first inspired by the Robert Browning poem, Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came. King first published the first section of The Gunslinger as a short story by the same name in the October 1978 edition of The Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, a magazine that young authors.
You're going to tell me it's about science fiction and fantasy?
Yeah, it's young authors would submit short stories to get their name out there. It's a thing that no longer exists.
The Game Informer for this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
King would continue the story in 4 more entries to the magazine in 1980 and 1981. These 5 stories were then collected, edited, and released as a novel in 1982, after he had been signed to after his the success of Carrie, and he had been signed to a publisher and basically needed more output to fulfill his contract. They put this out as the book. The Gunslinger is the first novel in the series. It's separated into 5 chapters, quote unquote, by these 5 short stories. King says he started the novel in 1970, and it took him 12 years to finish after he read the poem it's based on as a sophomore in college. He would then go on to release 6 more novels and a novella serving as a prelude. The first of these sequel novels came out in 1987, and he would conclude the series in 2004. In 2003, in the lead up to the final 2 novels of the series, Stephen King reissued the Gunslinger, the first novel, with edits and rewrites to make it more in line with the continuity of the rest of the series. There's some stuff that like some George Lucasian things in it,
Sure.
where you clearly he didn't write these short stories with the whole plan thought out, so he kind of fixed them in a reissue. It's nothing awful. He to give some of the story away, this takes place in like an alternate reality, an alternate dimension. And originally the first book was like very much set in a post-apocalyptic version of our world. So he basically did some things to kind of differentiate that.
I mean, I think some people might hear like, oh, he went and put an errata in there, and that's tough. I'm just stuck on like 20 years to write this story.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, I don't know. That's wild.
Yeah.
I'm still like having a hard time wrapping my mind around that. And so, of course, at some point he was like, oh yeah, a thing I said 12 years ago doesn't quite jive with where I want the story to go now.
Yeah. It's from the wiki articles I read, the differences end up being things like he makes a lot of references to pop culture throughout the series. So a lot of those are kind of just clarifying, like, the song singing in the bar isn't the old song Hey Jude from bygone centuries. It's a weird crossing over of worlds and like passed on. Or like there's one of them was like he removed image of him reading a magazine because paper is supposed to be scarce in this world, and so like
Sure.
changing that plot point to not a magazine just made it more consistent with like that bit of lore. It's all really minor things like that. Actually,
Cool.
It's not anything major.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So he released the last two books in the series in 2004, books 6 and 7. And then in 2012, he released a new book, a new entry to the series that is kind of set in between the 4th and 5th books. So it's not a continuation of the story. It's a like wedging in more exposition between books 4 and 5. And then Todd, as you mentioned earlier, in 2017, a movie based on the first 3 books in the series was released. The Gunslinger, starring Idris Elba as the titular gunslinger and Matthew McConaughey as its antagonist, the Man in Black, came out. It was pitched as the next telling of this story in the time loop. The series wraps with the whole thing being a time loops on forever, and the story gets retold forever and ever. It was critically panned, a commercial failure. Didn't go over well. No one liked it. I think it has a 16 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazon bought the adaptation rights in 2018 and has had a TV series in development ever since.
It's funny, and I'm glad you commented on it. I figured you would, but I just don't remember hearing anything about this movie other than this movie's coming out. Oh, it's bad. And then no one talked about it ever again.
Yeah. It was in theaters a very short time. It was very much a let's start our own unending franchise like the MCU, like rush job. Stephen King likes it. He says he thinks it's a good adaptation, held back by the I don't know what. Stephen King also has a tendency to really like all the bad adaptations of his books and really hate all the good adaptations of his books.
Well, Stephen King also makes 5 cents every time someone streams it on a service.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah.
I think literally the only 2 exceptions to that rule are Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me. I think those are the 2 like critics like them and Stephen King likes them adaptations. Everything else, it's like if it's popular and good, he hates it, and if it's bad and schlocky, he loves it. It's great. It's a great rule to live by. So let's get into The Gunslinger, the first book in the series. I've read this book in preparation for this. I've not read the whole series of books because I didn't have that kind of time. I might read them. This was very good. I want to see where it goes. So I may read them eventually, but not on any amount of timeline now that I don't have to. The Gunslinger follows Roland Deschart, or Roland of Gilead, however you want to refer to him, who is the last of the Gunslingers, as he pursues the Man in Black to the Dark Tower. He is the 30th descendant of King Arthur of Eld in this world, and carries 2 45mm revolvers that were passed down to him from his father, and, that we later learn, were forged from the steel of Excalibur.
It's kind of cool. I like that.
That is tight. Yeah.
Let me explain all of the proper nouns that got thrown out in that were generated from the crazy mind of Stephen King. Gunslingers are a trained elite who served as peacekeepers and diplomats to like high royal society before this world's collapse. If you think Jedi but with Colt 45s, you're not too far off.
I'm in. I'm done. Sold.
Yeah. Great. Perfect.
Yeah, they like shoot they shoot guns extremely well. They do like a gun martial art and have this weird near superhuman way of reloading guns super fast, and it's cool, it's awesome, and it's again like Jedi but with Colt 45s. The Dark Tower is a literal tower and is also the linchpin of existence, quote unquote, in the words of the book. Surprise, this is a multiverse story, and the Dark Tower is stands at the crossroads of reality, the multiverse. It's like the nexus point of reality. The Man in Black, aka Randall Flagg, aka Walter O'Dim, aka Martin Broadcloak, is the series antagonist. He has a lot of different names because he's a dark sorcerer with supernatural abilities, including necromancy and prophecy. He's existed for a long time, does a lot of dark and manipulative things, in service of the Crimson King, all caps, who is the devil, the literal devil. It's how we perceive the Crimson King in our reality is the devil. But the Man in Black seeks the Dark Tower to claim its power and become a god on the level of the Crimson King himself.
I thought you were going to rhyme that last one. He seeks the tower to gain the power to something his something. I don't have the end of it, but I'll get back to you.
You got a whole episode to figure it out. The Man in Black, Randall Flagg, has appeared in 9 of Stephen King's other novels as a demon or the source of the supernatural evil in that book. He's like in Christine the Possessed Car, he's like the thing that puts the demon spirit in the car or whatever. This series serves to connect all of Stephen King's books in this multiverse we exist in, and the Man in Black is like hops through these other books as a antagonist in them. The biggest one he's in is The Stand. He's in The Stand as the propagator of the virus and the man who takes seizes power in the collapse of society after a worldwide pandemic. It's very cool. We learn in flashbacks that the Man in Black has served as a wizard and advisor to Roland's father, our titular character's father, pulling the strings that led to the collapse of the old world, quote unquote, and leading to the events that sent Roland on his quest to find the Dark Tower. The Man in Black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Opens the first chapter of The Gunslinger, and we are introduced to Roland as he trudges through a mystical desert, reminiscent of the American Southwest, as he heads southeast towards the mountains in pursuit of the Man in Black, as they both head to the Dark Tower. We won't be told the significance of any of those things until chapters or even books from now, but Stephen King writes in such a way that you get the significance and the power of the quest he's on. He's on it's a weird mythical quest, like Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Yeah, he's got a hero's journey. We don't know why exactly yet, but you want to find out because it's cool and good. The Gunslinger is broken into 5 chapters, the 5 stories first published in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, collected into one big book. The first chapter introduces us to Roland already in pursuit of the Man in Black. He's got a mule, and he is not wandering, but crossing the desert in chase of the Man in Black.
Roland is described as a large, lanky man with a sun and wind-worn face. Stephen King pretty openly based him on Clint Eastwood's A Man with No Name, like from the Fistful of Dollars trilogy. It's Clint Eastwood on a mystical journey. He wears a wide brim Stetson hat, a cowboy hat, and he has two large revolvers on his hips, weighted specifically to fit his hands and be weighted to his long and tall shape. He mentions that when the guns were passed to him from his father, they added weights to them to make them more balanced to him, being taller than his father. He comes upon a small farm inhabited by a man named Brown and his pet raven Zoltan. Brown offers Roland lodging, food, and water for the night, and we get our first indication that this world is not like our own, but shares things with it, as one of the things the raven Zoltan has like been trained to say, like a parrot kind of thing, is the beans the musical fruit rhyme.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because the only two things this man grows on his farm is able to grow in this farm desert is corn and beans. So he taught him the beans the musical fruit thing. He says he also tried to teach him the Lord's Prayer, but he didn't want to learn that and just only got the beans the musical fruit poem in.
Good.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Over dinner, Brown tells Roland that the man in black stopped at the farm recently, but he's not sure how recently. The phrase "time's funny out here" gets thrown around a lot through the rest of the book. No one can remember when things happened because it's a giant desert where the sun just punishes you for existing and you can't remember time. Roland mentions passing through the nearby town of Tull and having to kill a man there. Brown, living alone in this desert, pries a little further, trying to get a story, and we flash back to Roland entering the town. A lot of flashbacks through this series. A lot of the book starts in media res, and we flash back to the actual story. It's fun. Tull,
that's cool.
Yeah. Tull is your typical old western shit town. Through King's description, we learn Tull is very poor and isolated and on the decline. We get our second crossover to our world here. As Roland enters and approaches the town saloon, the honky tonk piano player in there is playing "Hey Jude." The drunks are all singing "Hey Jude" in this bar that's not on Earth. So Roland goes to the town saloon and enters literally to the trope of the whole bar falling silent as he steps in.
It's a record scratch.
Yeah,
as is tradition.
The piano stops. Everyone, the conversations all stop and look at him and watch him walk to the bar, where he orders three hamburgers and a beer and pays with a gold coin. This order and coin both being a display of wealth that borders on insulting to these people. Every time he pays for something, it's with a gold or silver coin, and everyone is flabbergasted by it, and then tells him I can't make change for this, and he's don't worry about it. I got
too
it.
rich for it to matter.
It's you get the impression that the money doesn't even matter to him. It's his journey. It's all in service of getting to the Dark Tower.
Sure.
As he eats, an old man named Nort approaches him and taunts him in the High Speech, which is the old language of Gilead, the old language of his ancestors.
Can I stop you for a second?
Wait.
Are you gonna do what I'm gonna do, Matt?
we might be about to do the same thing.
Are you doing?
Do we?
Oh,
are
you
we
are.
gonna do it together on 3?
Well, no, I don't.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's fine. You go
What
first.
I was gonna say is hey, listeners, Andrew's not here today. And boy, is he sad that you're gonna talk about someone named Nort, and he's not here to make the Kingdom Hearts reference. So we're not going to.
Well, I'm going to.
fuck.
You're gonna, Kyle, are you about to tell me about somebody who's gonna done get Norted?
Nort. I forget the specifics of what getting Norted means, but Nort gets Norted.
Same.
It means you have a series of evil clones, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay. Well, he doesn't get that. He doesn't get Norted in that way, but he gets Norted.
Okay.
Yeah. So this old man approaches Roland and taunts him in this language that he should know nothing about. And Roland recognizes this. He's like, he shouldn't know this, and recognizes the signs of a trap laid by the man in black. Nort leaves the bar, and Allie, the bar's owner, tells Roland about the day the man in black passed through Tull. We flash back again as Allie explains that Nort was the town junkie addicted to quote-unquote devil grass.
Is it pot, Kyle?
It's not.
Is it the pot?
It's not pot. It's like a
Feels like it's pot.
It's like a heroin, like an opiate type drug in this world.
I see. Usually, devil's grass is the gateway drug to that sort of thing, Kyle.
Yeah. He starts out smoking it, and then he starts like dipping it, like chew, and eventually like stops eating to just be high on devil grass all the time. And the day the man in black comes to town, Nort first stumbles into the bar, vomits black bile, and collapses dead.
Neat.
Yeah.
Great.
Allie and the other patrons of the bar clean Nort up, get his body kind of cleaned up for burial when the man in black arrives. Upon arrival, we get the same kind of record scratch, everything comes to a halt moment. But the man in black almost immediately starts performing a ritual on Nort's dead body, reanimating his corpse. I originally had bringing him back to life. It's not the same. He doesn't come back to life. He reanimates his corpse. Everyone,
okay, I get that.
Everyone immediately recognizes that like Nort's not back, but here he is talking and saying things, but he's got nothing going on behind his eyes anymore.
Oh, he's still like sentient though? Like you can still
He's got like memories of being alive. One of the things he says is he thinks he's been touched by God being brought back to life. That is what he thinks, and he says like I wish God would have taken away my addiction to devil grass though, and like so he's he's like aware but not. It's weird. The ritual kind of clears out the bar. Everyone and all the normal patrons leave. Allie goes like up to her room that's above the bar, and when she comes back down hours later, Nort is still there in the bar, just kind of like chilling in this empty bar. The man in black is gone, and he left a piece of paper with her name on it with Nort, who gives it to her. And this is where we like first hear like paper is scarce in this world. It's very valuable. So like getting this paper with your name on it is in and of itself very shocking already. She opens the paper and reads a warning from the man in black. Nort has now seen what comes after death, and the man in black has locked it away in his mind, but he left a way to unlock it. If Allie says the word 19 to Nort, he will reveal to her death's secrets, which will drive her insane.
just specifically the word 19.
Yeah, is there any context there?
Not that I have found. There might be, but it's just said 19.
So is this like when we play Cheers Governor? Like there's just a rule you can't say 19.
Yeah, that's just you can, but there's consequences.
Yeah, you can, but you'll be driven insane by knowing death's secrets, Matt.
Just like
And
when you play the drinking game, Cheers Governor.
Just like the drinking game, Cheers Governor. Just to that one guy, though. So, like, if she's just counting and she says, like, 17, 18, 19, does she immediately see death's secrets?
She has to say it with him. They spell out the rules. She has to say it with him.
There's got to be a notary.
She has to say it with him present. When she's done telling this story, Roland kind of tells her, like, you need to forget this. You need to forget that 19 comes after 18. You count 17, 18, 20 now. Like 10 and 9 adds up to 18. Half of 38 is 17. Like, you don't know the number 19 anymore.
Half of 38 isn't 17, but
right. That's
I was like, wait a minute, I missed where we got there. Hang on. Time out.
Yeah. Both of them realizing, like, having the knowledge that you can say the word to this man and be told death's secrets.
Gotcha.
Is an inevitable trap you will spring. It's like when someone tells you don't think of pink elephants, the first thing you do is think of pink elephants. Like, it's not an if, it's a when type of thing. It's a curse. He cursed her with this, like, temptation. Allie tells Roland that the man in black also visited the town preacher, a woman named Sylvia Pitson. Roland visits Sylvia after the Sunday service and can immediately tell that she has been charmed or possessed or whatever by the man in black. Roland confronts her, and she tells Roland that the man in black left a child in her womb, a great king, that Roland knows is not the son of God like she thinks it is, but a demon. She's going to give birth to a demon.
She got a devil baby in her.
Yeah. So Roland kills the demon in her womb, springing the man in black's trap laid for him. And Sylvia, like, whips the town into a frenzy bent on killing Roland. They like pour out of all these old West buildings and just have madness in their eyes with the express goal of killing him. This frenzy leads Roland to killing the entire town, revealing the deadly talent and cold nature of the gunslinger. Roland remarks that he kills almost 200 people with a cold sorrow, but no guilt at all. He feels no guilt over it, as he feels it is his destiny to reach the Dark Tower, and therefore anything he must do to survive and reach the tower is more moral than, like, not doing it, than dying and ending his quest.
Ends justify the means.
The ends justify the means. That's a recurring theme through this book and his character, as we will learn. That is more or less chapter 1 of The Gunslinger. The next morning, Roland leaves the farm and continues on into the desert. His mule dies, so he leaves it there.
Oh, bummer.
He's on foot. We jump forward 16 days. We're into chapter 2 now, and Roland fears he's not going to make it through this desert. He's out of water. He's dehydrated. He's worried he's going to die before he makes it through this desert. On the verge of madness from dehydration, Roland sees a child in among rocks and an abandoned kind of building, but he mistakes the child for the man in black and, like, draws his guns and chases after him and almost shoots this kid before realizing it's not the man in black and just a kid, and then immediately passes out from heat exhaustion. He wakes up under a shelter and with a wet cloth on his head to find that this boy that he almost killed has, like, nursed him back to health, which is great.
Oh, that was so nice.
Yeah. But the boy introduces himself as Jake Chambers, but does not know how he ended up in this desert, and he's starting to forget, like, where he came from before. he remarks that like Roland asks him like a question and he tries to think of the answer, and Jake kind of says something like, you know, if you'd asked me yesterday, I probably would have been able to answer you, but I've like been forgetting more and more of where I came from each day. So Jake kind of clumsily describes a wealthy upbringing in 1980s New York City. He went to a private school. His dad works for, quote, the network as understood by a child. Just explaining like he is the son of two kind of rich yuppie parents in New York City. And that's when he begins to forget more and more of his old life, basically. Roland offers to help him remember and hypnotizes Jake with a like bullet trick. He like twiddles a bullet between his fingers, like that coin trick, and it hypnotizes Jake and helps him remember the day he came to this world. So we flash back to a normal day of Jake's getting ready for school, walking through downtown New York City to go to school, when a quote priest in all black robes throws Jake in front of a moving car, killing him instantly.
Oh no!
Oh,
yeah.
Holy shit!
Yeah. So Jake dies and like came and appeared in this desert now. Out of the flashback, Jake struggles to continue, saying, when I remembered the tire running over me, I could taste the blood and shit in my mouth again. Like Stephen King writes this graphic description of like his innards getting just crushed by this car. So Roland hypnotizes Jake this time to sleep so he can like rest and forget how he died, can forget getting hit by this car, because he's like a 10-year-old kid and doesn't need that.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. Roland also realizes at this time he loves this kid like a son. He hasn't had any kids of his own. This kid like survived in this desert for a few days, seems cut from a tough cloth, and Roland feels a father to son like love for him now. He also thinks that this feeling this love may be a trap laid for him by the man in black.
Right.
The next morning, Jake shows Roland where he got the water from and the entrance to a cellar in this old way station so that they can like see if there's any food in there, fill up their water bags, and stock up before they continue out of this desert together. Roland's going to take him with him, at least out of this desert where he'll surely die again. So Roland goes down into the cellar alone and is confronted by what he calls a speech demon. This is the actual trap that was left by the man in black. This demon taunts him in this basement for the massacre he did in Tull, for killing all those people in that town. Roland overcomes the demon by destroying the skeleton that it's possessing. The man in black kind of left it in this skeleton. So Roland is able to destroy it and takes the skeleton's jawbone, which becomes important later. And Roland and Jake continue into the mountains. That's chapter 2. Chapter 3, we've jumped forward again another few days. Roland and Jake have reached the foothills of the mountains, are out of the desert, and are in this area that's like lush with woods and life and water. So they're able to like refill their water skins. They make a camp. They're gonna like rest and recover for a few days before they continue up the mountain. Like we got out of the desert. Let's recover from that. The first night, however, Roland wakes up to find Jake is possessed and sleepwalking out of the camp into the woods. As he straps his guns on. He recognizes the signs of a succubus for whatever reason. He and chases after Jake and uses the jawbone that he took from that cellar to dispel the possession or break the whatever trance is on Jake, and takes him back to camp. Roland goes back after the succubus, leaving Jake and with the jawbone in camp to protect him. And when he comes upon the succubus and talks to it, he learns that it is also an oracle gifted with prophecy. So he has sex with this succubus so that he can learn his fate. He can get a prophecy told from him. That's the price of getting to get a prophecy from a succubus, apparently.
He did the Avatar mind meld with the tree.
Yeah. He put his hair tail. He did his hair tail with the tree, but it's sex with a succubus.
Yeah.
So we flash back in this prophecy. We flash back to Roland's childhood in Gilead, and we learn that his father was the Lord of Gilead. He was like in charge of the what is essentially the Vatican to this religion. His dad was the Pope, and he was advised by Martin, which is one of the aliases of the Man in Black. Although Roland didn't know he was the Man in Black at this time. Roland describes the abusive training that all prospective gunslingers go through as children, and tells a story about a lesson in quote unquote leadership from his father, where Roland turned over this cook, one of the few people who are like nice to him as a child. Roland turns him over for treason after overhearing a conversation where this cook agreed to poison the city's food at the behest of a character we haven't met, the Good Man, who is organizing a rebellion against Gilead on behalf of the Crimson King. So Roland turns him over for treason for that. He feels bad because this cook has only been nice to him, but is obviously planning to kill his family. And his father assures him that he did the right thing, and that this guilt over getting a man who, even though this man was kind to him, he ultimately did the right thing. And this guilt was just something he would have to learn to deal with, learn to overcome if he was going to follow in his father's footsteps, kind of thing. Fucked up childhood is what we're getting at here. Yeah.
Right.
Having received the prophecy he was seeking, and that prophecy is mostly like set up for the next book. We'll cover it. Jake and Roland continue through the mountains, having spotted the Man in Black working his own way up the cliffs. In an attempt to gain ground on the sorcerer, Roland leads Jake through some old mining tunnels that kind of cut under the mountain, in an old rail cart. So they're like riding this old rail cart through abandoned mining tunnels. As they ride the rails, Roland tells Jake another story from his childhood, in an answer to a question of like, why are we chasing this guy? Roland tells him this story, and recounts the discovery of an affair between Martin, the Man in Black, and Roland's mother, and how Martin used Roland's discovery of this affair and knowledge of his abusive training to kind of goad him into taking his final gunslinger trial early, before he's ready. He's, just does a like you're just a kid. You couldn't do anything about this even if you wanted to, but if you were a gunslinger, maybe you could. Yeah. Yeah. Martin's hope is that Roland fails the trial because he's just a kid. He's like 14. And failing the trial would lead to him getting exiled from Gilead and remove him as an obstacle for the Crimson King and his plan to overthrow the city. However, Roland passes the trial, sacrificing his pet hawk as a distraction to like gain the upper hand against his teacher and pass the test. Literally, Roland emphasizes his relationship with this hawk and how he's like closer to it than any of his friends, and still like has it die in service to him so that he can become a gunslinger and fulfill his destiny, kind of thing.
Sure.
Another ends justify the means story. This also hearing this makes Jake worry about the nature of their relationship and if Roland would do anything like that to him if the opportunity presented itself. We'll come back to that.
But wait.
As they continue, they are forced to stop the rail car by an obstruction on the tracks. There's like rocks on the tracks. And as they get out to clear them, they are attacked by slow mutants, mutated descendants of the people that worked in these mountains. If you think like the ghouls from Fallout, you're not too far off.
Sure.
Roland uses his gunslinger abilities to hold off the slow mutants while Jake like clears the rocks from the tracks, and they're able to escape. They take this rail cart even further into the mountain, as far as they can go to the edge of a giant chasm, and get off to cross this chasm on foot. They find this old like bridge or mining structure or something that like spans the chasm, and like crawl across it to get across to exit these tunnels. As they're crossing almost to the other side, the structure starts to crumble kind of beneath Jake's feet, and he almost falls into the chasm before Roland catches him. As Roland is trying to pull him back up and save him, the man in black appears on the other edge of the chasm to where they're trying to go, and basically tells Roland, like, you can save this child, or you can catch me, but you can't do both. So Roland drops Jake into the chasm to his death and exits the tunnels with the man in black. That's chapter 4. Roland and the man in black walk together down the mountain. They exit the tunnels. They walk down the mountain, and the two stop, and the man in black pulls out a deck of tarot cards and reads Roland his fate. They kind of fight, and the man in black uses magic to like incapacitate him and then like gives him his tarot reading. The man in black reveals the sailor, which refers to Jake, I guess. And then he gives him the next 3 people Roland will meet on his journey, with the prisoner card, the Lady of Shadows card, and the death card. He then flips the tower as the center of Roland's destiny and tells Roland that the Crimson King, the one I serve, is your real enemy and is the one who currently sits at the Dark Tower, the one who controls the Dark Tower. Roland attacks the man in black, who knocks him out with a spell, enters his mind, and reveals the multiversal nature of the universe to him. He like flies him, like shows him visions of space and other worlds.
Did the Doctor Strange cutscene?
It's very much the Doctor Strange cutscene, all in an attempt to get him to like back off, to be like, this is to try and convince him like, you're out of your element. This is too much for you. Stop it and just don't worry about it, and let us take over the universe. It'll be better that way.
Just let us take over the universe.
Yeah.
Come on, man, be cool.
Yeah. And he shows him the Dark Tower and how it is at the center of all of these different universes. The center point, like the linchpin of reality. Roland wakes up, and it's 10 years later. lying next to
Oh, damn.
yeah, lying next to a skeleton that he assumes to be the Man in Black's. And he takes its jawbone to replace the one that he gave Jake. And that's the end of The Gunslinger.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously do a lot of heavy lifting here to set up the conflict between what is like our protagonist and the Man in Black.
Yeah.
Like I like this whole like, hey, I'm a big problem.
Yeah.
And also there's a bigger problem, but like I know everything, you know nothing. Also, I'm going to put you to sleep and read your destiny by the light of the moon on these here tarot cards.
Yeah. They have a very like gentleman's understanding rivalry, like a very like
it's like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
There's a monologue involved.
Yeah.
It's that like Bond or the like Sherlock and Moriarty kind of like it's a gentleman's disagreement.
Yes. With that, we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna do a lightning round of the other 7 books in the series. We'll be right back.
Are you itching for a good story? Laughter among friends, maybe even a mystery or two? Well, you're in luck. Fire Breathing Kittens is a standalone Dungeons & Dragons podcast. Each episode is a separate 3-hour-long story, like a movie for your ears, so you can listen to these adventures in any order you like. So join us on a real play D&D quest as we solve mysteries, attempt comedic banter, and enjoy friendship. Fire Breathing Kittens podcast. Fantasy, action, mystery, friendship.
All right, we're back. Like I said before, we're going to do a quick lightning round of the rest of the series. And we're going to start with the weird prelude novella. This is called the Sisters of Illyria. It came out in 1998. And it's just a short little entry that kind of takes place in between the fall of Gilead, but before the events of the first book in Tall, before those events, where Roland encounters a group of vampire nuns who bring survivors of this wasteland back to their hospital to nurse them back to health and eat them. And it's just the story of him escaping the vampire nuns.
Awesome.
That's kind of rad.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So these vampire nuns call themselves the Little Sisters of Illyria. That's where the title comes from. Roland he comes across a dog eating a dead body and finds this medallion on it that he takes with him. And before he is hit over the head by someone and wakes up in this hospital, the sisters initially tell him like, "Oh, we found you unconscious in the desert. We're gonna nurse you. We're gonna nurse you back to health and send you on their way." As he gets better, he learns that they are in fact these vampires and plan to eat him. But with that medallion, because he has he picked up that medallion, it's serving as this. It has this protective quality about it, and they can't eat him. They're kept at bay by this medallion. So as he gets better and strong enough to leave, they keep him poisoned, so he's still bedridden and can't escape. And eventually, one of the sisters, one of the nuns, while she's like administering a dose of this poison to him, reveals to him like, I didn't join the sisters willingly. They forced me to be a vampire with them. I don't want to do this anymore. I want out, so I'm going to help you. So she like a few more time passes while he's getting poisoned, and she like skips a dose of the poison so that he can regain his strength and fight back. him and this this defector vampire nun fight off the sisters and escape, and lifts the curse from the one who helps him, who disintegrates into bugs. Bugs are another thing that the sisters do. It's That's it. That's the story. He meets some vampire nuns, and with the help of one, escapes and continues on his journey.
I mean, I feel like that's a way more interesting bottle episode than a lot of series get
Yeah.
for like a standoff book. You know?
That's awesome.
Like, that's a way more interesting second story in the series than most second stories.
This is not the second story. This came out, I think four or five books were out by the time he put out this little prelude, but still.
Sure.
Yeah. Book 2 is the next one. It's called The Drawing of Three. It takes place 10 years and 7 hours after the events of The Gunslinger, after he wakes up from his 10-year-long magic coma, and then 7 hours after that.
I love that they give him a break.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, bud, take a nap. We'll get back to you in 7.
Yeah. So Roland continues his journey to the Dark Tower along a beach, where he is attacked by Lobstrosities. Does anyone want to guess what Lobstrosities are?
Lobster atrocities.
Mutated lobster monsters. Yes, exactly, Todd. And he fights them off, but loses two fingers and a toe in the process, nerfing his gunslinger prowess a bit. That they specifically mention the 2 fingers that that he loses.
Like trigger. Yeah.
It's his pointer and ring finger, and it messes up his trigger and his like cool superhuman reloading trick. So he can't do that anymore.
This is a very specific, like, hey, I've been told this story from my good friend who read this, because I know what that ultimately leads to, that he gets there's a moment where he's still able to shoot the gun, but in a weird way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It might not be a huge deal, but like, I remember very vividly my buddy Zach telling me that he has to like swing the gun around and like pull the trigger with his pinky to fire it at one point, because he doesn't have a trigger finger.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice. So these wounds he takes get infected, and Roland continues along the beach, getting weaker and weaker, until he encounters 3 doors just out on this beach, labeled The Prisoner, The Lady of Shadows, and The Punisher. You might recognize those first 2 names from his tarot reading. Guess what?
No, I recognize the last one from my other reading, though.
No, I said The Punisher. I'm sorry. It's The Pusher. It's not The Punisher. The last one is The
different,
Pusher.
Kyle.
Yes, I know it is. It's very different. I just can't read. Each of these doors opens to New York City at different time periods. I think one's like the 60s, one's 70s, one's quote unquote modern day for the time, which is the 80s. And each door promises a new travel companion for Roland on his quest. So the prisoner, he goes through the prisoner door first and brings back Eddie Dean, a heroin addict. That's where the prisoner comes from. He's like a prisoner of this addiction, who is able to get medicine for Roland's affection that like it helps him get a little bit better, but doesn't clear the infection entirely. So he's got to keep looking. In exchange for using this multi-dimensional door to help him get cocaine through customs.
Cool.
Yeah. So they do that. Eddie Dean comes back to this world and waits while he goes through the second door, the Lady in Shadows. The Lady in Shadows is Odetta Holmes, a black woman with dissociative identity disorder. It's incorrectly called schizophrenia in the novel because it was written in the 80s before we identified those as 2 different things. And but she is a wealthy woman who is wheelchair bound, missing her legs below her knees from being pushed into an oncoming subway earlier. She is unaware.
By the pusher?
Don't spoil things, Matt. Don't read ahead, Matt.
Okay. All right. I'm back.
She is unaware of her. She's unaware of her other personality, who goes by Detta Walker. And this personality is very violent and predatory. Think an 80s depiction of dissociative identity disorder, and like you're not far off. This other personality was created or was formed after Odetta was hit in the head by a falling brick at a young age. He brings Odetta back and leaves her with what was the other guy's name? Eddie. So Eddie and Odetta are back. He goes through the pusher door now, very weak, still hit with this infection, but pushing onward. The pusher is Jack Mort, a sociopath who gets off by maiming and killing random strangers. Roland discovers that he is responsible for both of Odette's traumas. He's the one who pushed her in front of a subway and dropped a brick on her head as a child, although he is unaware that those were related. Those were the same person. To him, he was just dropping bricks and pushing a woman in front of a subway because he likes killing. Here he goes killing again.
All right, look, I'm not here to kink shame, but if your kink is killing people, I might shame you a little bit.
Yeah,
Might be a little shame.
Yeah, I think we can shame. I think we can shame people there. Jack Mort is also the man who pushed Jake. Jake, thank you. There's a lot of names. He's the one who pushed Jake in front of the car. And because of the timey-wimey interdimensional nature of these doors, Roland actually arrives in New York City before Mort has pushed Jake in front of that car. And Roland is able to stop that from happening, kind of out of his guilt from dropping Jake into a chasm. He stops him from getting hit by a car, which creates a time paradox that comes up later in the books, because that Jake was supposed to die so he could come to this world, so he could fall into that chasm and die for prophecy reasons.
So it's like a grandfather thing now.
Yeah,
grandfather
it's a
Marty McFly.
It's a Marty McFly situation.
It's a Marty McFly banging his mom situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I like most about this so far is that it had a very like early on Western-y aged vibe, and there's magic and there's that sort of thing. But we're no more than 2 books removed from that, and we've had vampire nuns.
Yeah.
And we've also had like a subway train, and here we have, Roland getting his fingers shot off and getting infected, and also this woman got hit in the head with a brick.
Yeah.
Like there's just like some pretty dramatic swings of like the tone and the setting, and I think that's fun.
Yeah. Cocaine's a hell of a drug, Todd.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Through interdimensional timey-wiminess, Eddie detoxes from heroin while Roland is in this door, and Odette sees, like, she like sticks her head in the door at one point, and that allows her to see like that Jack is the one who committed both her traumas, and lets her meet the other identity she has, Detta, and is able to merge now kind of her 2 identities into a new third person who she remains for the rest of the series, Susanna Dean. And then Roland comes out of the door. He kills Jack while he's in there. He's like, not dealing with that guy. He's not joining us. And the 3 all journey on to the tower. Book 3, The Wastelands. We're going to speed up here. The 3 find a beam of reality that traces a path directly to the tower. It's a literal like giant beam, like
The Bifrost Bridge.
Like the
That's
Bifrost Bridge. I was gonna say like think the Washington Monument, but it like goes off into eternity.
Sure.
And
yeah.
you follow that to the tower.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It is guarded by a cyborg bear who they fight and defeat.
What? No, wait. Incredible.
After we get the fight with the cyborg bear, and then we cut away to Jake, who is in our world, the real world now existing as a living paradox. A lot of exposition and lore later. Jake and Roland are reunited in Roland's world, and Jake forgives Roland for dropping him into a chasm to his death. The whole group journeys on, and they come upon the ancient city of Lude, which is this ancient, highly technological city that is now in decline, and join this war. The people there have been fighting against kind of the AI that runs the city and the people that live in it. They fight in this war, are unable to stop the destruction of the city by the AI, and they ride out on a monorail. A monorail that they find is also powered by AI. This AI, driven insane by centuries of existence, attempts to kill the group, or threatens to kill the group, unless they can defeat it in a riddle contest. That's the end of book 3.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Book 4 opens on the riddle contest. It opens with like explaining that like they've been in the interim between books, they've been locked in this riddle contest with this AI for hours while it tries to trip them up so it can kill them, and they eventually overpower it. Eddie starts not telling it riddles, but like puns, like jokes with the setup to a riddle, but the answer is a pun, which like makes the AI short circuit and stop functioning. So they are able to stop the suicide AI train from killing them. We get a lot more backstory into Gilead and the affair between Roland's mother and the Man in Black, and I lost my place here. The kind of the setup, we get a more thorough telling of Roland overcoming his final gunslinger trial and the start of his journey. Yada yada. It's the exposition. We there's a setup, a woman set up in the earlier books as like the one woman Roland has ever loved. We get their backstory in this book, and it continues. The next book in the series, chronologically, is the one that came out. This is the one that came out in 2012, like long after the series wrapped. This is called The Wind Through the Keyhole. It's more exposition. It's like an adventure they go on in the interim that like gives you more backstory, but like doesn't ultimately change much because it came out after the series wraps up. Book 5 is called The Wolves of Kala. This starts setting up for the finale of the book. 6 and 7, books 6 and 7 are kind of a 2-part finale. So this starts setting up the finale. Roland is able to confront the Man in Black and the Crimson King. The Crimson King reveals to him his plan is to get to the Dark Tower and use its power to destroy the universes for no other real reason than he's the devil and he wants to destroy the universes and maybe rule over the ashes, so to speak. Roland overpowers, maybe kills the Man in Black. I'm not entirely sure at this point. This is where I was doing a lot of really quick reading. But we
This is where we twisted Kyle's arm and said, "No, finish it.
Yeah,
Do it."
We're getting set up for the final showdown though. There's like the two big warring factions. We're setting up for our big like two nameless faceless armies clash in a good versus evil fight. And then we go into book 6 and 7, which are kind of, book 6 is pretty much like that clash, that those two armies fighting and the results thereof. And then book 7 is called The Dark Tower, and it is Roland getting to the Dark Tower, facing off and defeating the Crimson King, and then the ending that is put into this prologue, and it kind of opens with a like with Stephen King kind of like addressing the reader, like, "Dear reader, if you want to have the happy ending to this story, please stop reading here. Do not continue further if you want the good ending."
Wow.
Because if you read the prologue, it's Roland going into the Dark Tower, he starts to climb it, and is confronted with all of the things he has done in his past to get here, kind of all of his sins to get here. He learns that the tower is not just a tower, it is a living appendage of some god he can't fully comprehend. He ascends the tower and is confronted with all his sins, and he reaches the top of the tower to realize that this is not his first time completing the journey and reaching the top of the tower, that he has done it infinite times before, and he's kind of doomed to do it infinite times more, as the nature of the multiverse is that it is cyclical. Everyone's fate is written and sealed to happen over and over again on loop until the inevitable heat death of the universe, basically. End of story, roll credits.
Interesting. That is cool that there was a sign that was like, "Look, you can get out now. If you're really into this, you can just walk away." And also an interesting way to end that story, that it's, this kind of like vicious time loop that goes on forever and ever. That's a really interesting thing. And I like, personally, I just like stories with bad endings, right? Where like not everything comes together, and there's something interesting in that, and I don't know that we get enough of it, and that's a cool way to do it.
I will say it's kind of reported that at least in 2004, when The Dark Tower, the 7th book, came out, fans of the series did not like that ending. They were not happy with that reveal.
Wow. Okay.
And so that is part of what that like interim book that he wrote in 2012 does, is lays a little bit more groundwork, like chronologically in the story, for that to be the ending. It like sets up a little more of the like, this is going to end in a time loop, doomed to repeat this type of thing again, through a flashback from Roland's life, like similar to how the Hawk story set up him dropping Jake into the chasm. Same kind of setup payoff is tucked into that book. And yeah, so that is where I said in the beginning when we were talking about the movie, the movie was at least pitched to fans as a like, this is one of those other loops around
like another
eternity. That's why there are differences from the book. Like, that's how we're going to explain away not being beat for beat from the book, why it's Idris Elba and not a Clint Eastwood type, etc., etc. And and that's gonna also be the explanation for the eventual Amazon series, should it ever get released, is that's another wrap around eternity to retelling it again.
I mean, I like that idea. It's a shame that it didn't like latch on.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows with whatever the series being developed is. I kind of assume they're going to take that same angle again and just try harder.
I would hope. Which Amazon's got a decent track record for adaptations. The Lord of the Rings was pretty universally acclaimed.
I think Amazon is about to do are they doing Fallout? Vault 33?
Yeah.
At Amazon?
Was that Amazon or was that Peacock?
No, it's not Peacock.
I think it's Amazon. And The Boys is a very good adaptation of that source material. So
I think if they nail, I mean, The Boys is great, and I'm not familiar with the source material all that much, but if they nail Fallout, I would have a lot of faith in them doing right by this series, because it's just, Fallout also has this, it's in the past, but also the future, and also there are vampire nuns kind of energy to it.
Yeah. Kyle, just because we're talking about an adaptation, I'm really curious from your research. Could you give me like the top 3 cast of who you would put in this right now? Like if you had to pick your Roland and your Man in Black.
I will say I do really like Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey in both those roles. Like I don't know much about the movie. I can pretty confidently say I doubt they were the issue with it. They have cast, or at least at one point had cast, Roland for the Amazon series. I lost that name. I didn't write it down. I don't know. This is one instance where like I as a movie viewer am getting tired of seeing like the same 30 actors get cast over and over and things again.
Yeah.
This is an instance where I wouldn't have as big a problem with that, because these are supposed to be like this is a centuries long quest Roland is on, so like them casting actors we know already wouldn't be such a bad thing. I was not prepared to answer that. I don't have actors ready to give to you, Matt. I can't.
That's okay.
I can't
no worries.
think of them. So yeah, I don't know. The last thing I did want to talk about before we wrap up today is the Stephen King extended universe, for lack of a better phrase. That is another thing these books do, is that they canonically link all of Stephen King's novels, at least, to this multiverse.
Like the Gunslinger series is the glue that kind of brings it all together?
Yes.
That's really kind of tight.
So the big examples from this are, one, the Man in Black character is the one that he appears in 9 other novels. He pops into that universe that is like there's the real Earth is a universe in this multiverse, and then like the Stephen King stories Earth is another universe in this. So he pops up in a few places in that universe as an antagonist, as a evil deity. Pennywise is the clown. Pennywise is the same, has the same powers, is the same like same kind of entity that the Crimson King is. They're the same like godlike being that can traverse the multiverse. I think the difference is like Pennywise gets its power from fear, and the Crimson King gets its power from like some other ethereal concept like that. That's the big difference. The Shining is a big one that ties in. The like visions that Danny gets, the little boy gets in The Shining, are akin to some other type of like the visions of prophecy that like Roland gets from the tarot reading, from the Man in Black, or from the Oracle. Like those are the same things. The concept of shines, I'm sorry. Shines is a term that gets thrown around a lot in The Shining. Go figure. That connects back directly to this world. At one point, somewhere in the later books of the Dark Tower series, the characters actually like traverse to the real world, to quote unquote our universe, and meet Stephen King like in person.
Interesting.
That is a thing he has done. So Stephen King exists as himself as a character in this lore as well. There's tons of other like minor like one-off references to this concept all over the book, all over Stephen King's books. And then there is also like companies, fictional companies in one novel are referenced in another. I forget what other book it is, but there's a book that makes reference to both the Little Sisters by name, and then another book that makes a reference to vampire nuns as a bit. Those are both like considered connections to this universe. So, yes, there is a Stephen King extended universe, and yes, it has deep lore that you can go and find and connect the dots to on your wall with a crazy red line of string if you want. That's it. That's all I got for the Dark Tower series.
That's really cool. I'm perusing Stephen King's website, and there's like he's got a whole webpage specifically for the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, it sounds really cool. I'll have to do a little research and see what the audiobook looks like if there's audiobooks of everything in the series, because I would definitely listen to this.
All 8 books I talked about have audiobooks.
Well, then I will likely listen to this at some point. I can confirm
that.
This sounds very much like my shit. I like Western stuff, and I wish we got more modern. Not even modern's the wrong word, but like I wish we just got more new Westerns. You know?
Yeah.
Can I tell you
Westerns.
About our Lord and Savior, the Mandalorian?
Well, I can't watch The Mandalorian, Todd, because I have to watch The Mandalorian first. So I'll watch The Mandalorian after I watch The Mandalorian.
Great. This is very cool, though. Agree to everything that Matt just said. This is the kind of stuff I'm into. I, much like Matt, might listen to it. Again, I've been told about how cool it is for 20 years. And
now's the time, Todd.
Now's the time. I do look forward to there being a series about this, because I was interested back when the movie came out, but again, the reviews were so overwhelmingly bad, or just forgettable, that I was like, okay, never mind.
I really think the mistake the movie made was it tried to do 3 books in one. It tried to like get into the deep lore kind of too fast, where like Stephen King pretty specifically didn't throw you into the deep lore until you finished a whole story first, and this tried to like get all of it in one shot, and it was messy, it was hard to follow, and didn't get you hooked before it started making you remember a bajillion proper nouns. And
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
There is a lot of proper nouns in this.
There's
story.
a lot of proper nouns in this story. And I tried to I cut out a lot of them for us so we could like follow. There's a lot of proper nouns in this story, and it gets more proper noun heavy as the series goes on. It's a fantasy book. It's a high fantasy book written by a manic writer. So it gets a little out there. If that is all, then I'm going to thank everyone today for listening to Debate This. You can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DebateThisCast, or on our website at debatethiscast.com. Merch! We have that. Right now, you can go on the internet, capital T, capital I, the internet, and order things that say Debate This on them. All you need to do is head to our Redbubble page and give us your money. Does our Redbubble page have a cool and easy URL for us to read in an audio ad? No. But you can find it with relative ease by going to www.debatethiscast.com and visiting the Support the Show page. Until next time, I'm Kyle Harper.
I'm Todd. Send in the dancing Lobstrosities, Thomas.
And I'm Matt. There goes the man in black. Cole.
And we're saying thanks for debating with us. And if you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.
I laugh every time
Very
we do
good.
the merch closer because it always sneaks up on every one
Oh,
of us.
yeah.
We go, there's always a pause and then merch.
Merch.